And we're going to start with Sherry today. I think, let's see, sorry, 2, 4, 6. Let's go 4 each.
When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to give you countless descendants. At this, Abram fell face down on the ground. Then God said to him, this is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations.
Great. Todd and Sherry.
What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Instead, you will be called Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and kings will be among them. I will confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you, from generation to generation. This is the everlasting covenant. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you, and I will give the entire land of Canaan, where you now live as a foreigner, to you and your descendants. It will be their possession forever, and I will be their God.
And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations. He who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant.
All right. Don and Elaine.
All must be circumcised. Your bodies will bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. Any male who fails to be circumcised will be cut off from the covenant family for breaking the covenant. Then God said to Abram, regarding Sarai, your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai, for now her name will be Sarah. And I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations. Kings of nations will be among her descendants.
Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, and he laughed to himself in disbelief. How could I become a father at the age of 100? He thought, and how can Sarah have a baby when she is 90 years old? So Abraham said to God, may Ishmael live under your special blessing? And God replied, no, Sarah, your wife, will give birth to a son for you, and you will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my covenant with him and his descendants as an everlasting covenant. And as for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will make him extremely fruitful and multiply his descendants. He will become the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation.
All right. Fred and Julia, why don't you finish it up, please?
But my covenant will be confirmed with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. When God had finished spoken, he left Abraham and every male in his household, including those born there and those he had bought. Then he circumcised them, cutting off their foreskin just as God had told him. Abraham was 39 years old.
99.
He was 99 years old when he was circumcised.
And Ishmael, his son, was 13. Both Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised on that same day. along with all the other men and boys of the household, whether they were born there or bought as servants, all were circumcised with him.
Okey doke. Anything stand out in this chapter?
There was an awful lot of tears that day.
Yeah, it's really tough.
The one about Ishmael, when Abraham blessed Ishmael, I thought in the last chapter that he was going to be naughty, kind of like a donkey.
He's going to be kind of a wild guy.
Well, wild guy, yeah.
Mhm.
So it says that Abraham is blessing him. I guess it's 23. Took his son Ishmael.
Yeah, actually, I think what you're talking about is,
Before that, I guess.
yeah, let me see.
23, is that
Let's
you?
see.
Yeah, on the 23rd, he circumcised him at 23.
Verse 18.
18, yes, it is. May God Ishmael live under your special blessing, but God replied, no, Sarah, your wife will give birth to a son for you in your name. No, it's not that.
Okay,
But I think that's what you were talking about, though, is how Abraham was giving Ishmael a blessing. That's the only one in the chapter where that happens. And he thought, basically in verse 18, he was thinking that thought the only way God was going to fulfill his covenant is going to be through Ishmael.
Okay.
Well, I was reading the commentaries, and it said that basically, as far as we know, God hadn't talked to Abraham since Ishmael was born.
Mhm.
So that means it was 13 years of silence. And so, Abraham just assumed in 13 years they hadn't had a son with Sarah. So this was probably it.
Right.
So at this point, he just assumed that Ishmael would be the one to receive the blessing.
Yeah, and the key word there is God actually said, no,
Right.
it's Sarah who's going to have it, which means that he understood what Abraham was trying to say, which was, okay, I get it, Ishmael. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase. I guess Abraham was saying, okay, I get it. So may your special blessing be on Ishmael then. And God said, no, that's not what I'm coming for today. And again, you begin to see that every time there's a covenant, every time he mentions the covenant, he asks for something. Now, when he mentions the covenant the first time, I forgot the chapter, he asked Abram to leave, and Abram left. And same thing when Lot and Abram were also in Canaan already. God repeated the covenant again, and then I forgot what happened there, but then here now he's asking Abram to circumcise himself and everyone. And then I think the next 3 or 4 chapters, Abram to the lesson I think that we can get from that is that every time God asks us for something, because he is going to ask us for something, not because he needs us, but because that's part of the relationship. It seems like every time God is asking, or every time that God wants us to take a step forward, he asks us for what's going to be important to us, or what's important to us, because for the most part, the one thing he is really after is our pride. The one thing he's really after is our total, or our wanting to be independent of him. So every time he asks for, every time we get closer in our relationship, every time there's a step forward in our relationship, God always asks for something, until there'll come a time when he'll ask for everything. And I believe this pattern you can see in every one of leaders in the Bible. And I think we can also see that pattern in our life, that every time God shows himself to us, he's going to ask a sacrifice. And then we make up our minds one way or the other, whether to obey or not. Anything else?
It's really actually pretty explanatory, self-explanatory in itself, I think.
Right.
Don't you wonder, I mean, I know he did it, but don't you wonder how a person could circumcise themselves, the pain of it, and to do it? Boy, you had to have your heart in it, I guess, to know that you're going to do it.
Right. Now, this is the thing, because obviously in the New Testament, and we went through a lot of Paul's writings where Paul actually said, this is no longer the case. Now you look here, especially in the book of Genesis, it seems to me that God really made a really important part of this. A part of made this part of the covenant all so much so that he actually names this the everlasting covenant. And there's a whole lot of chapters between Genesis and Deuteronomy where God actually explains a little bit more about what this everlasting covenant is, and this is where, a lot of people really had a tough time. A lot of Jews had a tough time, because they're like, no, God said that this is going to be an everlasting covenant. Now, a lot of commentators, and this is some of the commentators that I would agree with, is that this was done not only to show total dependability on God, but also for health reasons. It's amazing that most first world countries nowadays would go with circumcision as far as when a baby is born, when a man is born, or a boy is born, because of health reasons. And I think what's interesting is the only people that don't really do this as much is what is that again? Most people in third world countries, and partly because they don't know the Bible, or medically they just don't understand the value of this. And so if we go to the New Testament, now it's circumcision of the heart. That's the most important. And the circumcision of the heart actually comes almost immediately after you give your life to God. It's at that point that God says, I'm going to change your heart. Now, I think this is, we're talking right now about how painful it is to have circumcision. I don't know what your experience is, and I'd love to hear it. Do you think it's painful?
I
Is
know
there
that
pain involved when it comes
the
to circumcision of the heart? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elaine.
no, the heart, no. But as the little baby boy that I had, I remember hearing this terrible scream at the end of the hallway where the operating room was. I was in the waiting room waiting for him to be brought to me. So I know it's painful, the actual procedure, but of the heart, I don't know why. I don't know about that. But that's another thing.
Well, I don't know. My mom, a nurse. I've
It's our connection.
for the child. And now I don't know what the baby was crying, but and this is what I thought was really interesting, because in the Jewish laws, the male child had to be circumcised by the 8th day. Now, Mom, maybe you can tell us a little bit about pain kids go through when it comes to circumcision.
Usually what we were told, where we were told is that on the 8th day, can you hear me?
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
8th day, the pain receptors are not yet. And so what they do only is to put for the child to suck the caro syrup, as a syrup, in order for them to be distracted. But the pain usually goes after that, because I know my boys they had it at 8 days, and then the other one was about 3 months because of health issue, and it's more painful. It is more painful when it's already 8 months. Yeah, because and even infection sets in more after 8 days.
Let's see, now ours is.
So that was
ours is-
our experience.
Our computer is going out, so I missed some vital words I know. But are you saying that there's no pain with it up till the 8th day, and then at the 8th day the pain is there to be felt?
Yeah, pain receptors are not fully developed yet when
Oh.
it is 8 days old. But after that, then the pain receptor begins, to develop. The child experience more pain, especially if they are already 1 year old or 2 years old. That is really very painful.
Yeah. Okay.
They
well,
usually give
I
them
know that and the youngster just screamed, and so I thought, oh, I was in pain listening to it from the waiting room.
Mm.
But maybe it was from some other
Mhm.
reason. Maybe they gave him a spanking, so he lay still or something. I don't know.
Well, do you know how old the kid was?
Yeah, he was about 7 or 8 days old.
Okay.
Yeah, it was within that time.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing about one of us having been circumcised after 8 days.
Yeah.
Wow. I learned something new, even about our family. Sure.
It's good to have mom in a little box talking to you.
Yeah, all my lands. I'm guessing that's my brother. He has the most issues, that's why. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, now, again, what do you think? Is there pain when God circumcises our heart?
Oh, you betcha. I would think so.
Could it be spiritual?
Sorry, Mom, I couldn't hear
Can't
that.
hear ya.
You were cutting in and out.
I said, could it be spiritual pain or emotional pain, not the physical pain, when you go into circumcision of the heart?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with. I think it's more
Emotional.
because and then I don't know what your experience is. I know, but from me, I didn't even understand what circumcision of the heart is. But number one, you have to give up something you love. and the reason why that is because we love sin to begin with, and because we love sin and God asks us to give that up, there's going to be some pain involved. And obviously for me anyway, the emotional part of it is the realization of sin. I don't know. I remember second grade after a week of prayer, and I don't even know what happened. There was just this, I even forgot who the speaker was or what he talked about, but it was the first experience I ever had when I realized what a sinner I was. And I cried all day. It was just this realization of, man, I need God. I think there is that spiritual realization. And, you look at the Bible, like Peter, when he realized how sinful he was. You look at even David, Moses, even there was a time when they somehow, even when they believed in God, there's just this realization that God is so good and what God is doing to you, that all you can do is cry, sometimes for joy, but sometimes also from the pain of realizing how far you've gone away from him. That's what I was kind of going to, that both circumcisions involve a sense of loss, because as God is cleaning us out, there is some emotional, spiritual, even mental pain that comes through as God cleans out our sins.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to say, is that it's in going with the metaphor of the physical circumcision, there is a cutting away of things that are in your life that can cause damage, that can keep you from your relationship with Christ. So there is a cutting away of things in your life when there's a circumcision of the heart.
I think that's what I was thinking too. When you're young, you don't have things built up in your life to get rid of. And as you're older, your life is full of stuff that when it's cleaned out, it hurts. But it's probably very good after it's cleaned out and you have that circumcision.
My friend was only about 8 years old. Did you say 8 years old, friend?
But I thought I was less than 8 days.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom. We can't hear you, Mom. Can you repeat that? I know you were saying something. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I said that you had it at 8 days old, even younger, But because of health issues for Freud, it was 8 months old when he had it.
Wow.
And it was more painful.
Sure.
But I mean, when you cried, when you realized you were sinful, and you cried, were you about 8 years old?
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. See, I was second grade. I remember that. I even, yeah, I remember that, Dave. Yeah, 8 days old. I never, yeah.
8 years and 8 days, yeah.
That's great math, Elaine. I didn't. And for me, last but not least, this whole thing that God gave a covenant for 3 people in this chapter. He gave it to now he gave it to Abraham, but the covenant he made was with the whole family, basically with Abram, then Sarah, even with Sarah. First of all, with both Abram and Sarah, part of the covenant was a name change. And it's interesting that with Abraham, Isaac, with Jacob, there was also a name change. And from that, we can gather that part of God changing us, because names back then wasn't just what you called people. It signified your character. It signified who you are. And so when we look at the promise for us, it seems like the covenant promise for us is that our names will also be changed. And we see that in the book of Revelation. I think for me, we begin to see what the everlasting covenant is all about, because the everlasting covenant isn't just for Abraham. And when we looked at the New Testament, the Israelite, or the new Israel, the spiritual Israel, is anyone who would follow Jesus. So it seems to me that what Abraham did is an example for us to follow God and to obey God. And that is why even in the book of Revelation, God's people are also commandment keepers, and they have the testimony of Jesus. And so these people, which is us, and I say that with confidence, that, you know, as God is working on our lives, not only is he working on circumcising our heart, just changing our lives, but somehow we have a special name as well. And our name is based on the blessing we're going to be here on earth. For Abram, he never saw how big a nation he was going to be. For Sarah, he never saw the kings that was born because of her faithfulness. I don't think we even understand how great an influence our life will be because we gave it to God. We really don't have a clue, just like Abraham did. For Abraham, he probably thought, one son, what's that, right? But he had faith that whatever God was saying is going to come to pass, and he will not see it until eternity comes. And this is part of the everlasting covenant. And so I believe when we get to heaven and we're on our throne, probably next to Abram, we will see how God has somehow weaved our lives to be the blessing he has called us to be. And somehow, you know, we will see that our name has our name actually means something throughout eternity on how God has worked his character in our lives to become the blessing in the world that he's called us to be. Even as I say it, it kind of gives me goosebumps to think that we have an incredible plan. God has an incredible plan for our lives. And I know some days we just wake up and we're like, another ho-hum day. And I think, like Abraham, we go to these periods in our life where we're like, man, we totally wasted our life on earth, or we wasted so much because of our mistakes. And I believe that as we look at Abram's life, we can also look at ours and say, no, God doesn't make mistakes. And we can say that with confidence to anyone who's looking at us as well. I don't know if you've ever felt like your life has been a mistake. I don't know if you've ever felt that at some point, or maybe you know people who would be like, man, you don't understand. My life has been nothing but mistakes. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I usually say, I don't know what your life is. I don't even know what your mistakes are, but I know God. And the God of the Old and New Testament seems to somehow intertwine our mistakes with his incredible plan for us. And the plan is a throne. I mean, the end of it is a throne, a brand new name, and eternity. And I believe we begin to see all of that covenant, even in this few chapters that we've been reading in Genesis. Okay. Again, sorry for the sermon. I get really excited about this part. I think if there's nothing else, go ahead and. Thank you for joining us at our prayer and Bible study session as we journey through the Bible one chapter at a time. We realize that you might have some questions or comments on the things that we discussed today. And if you do, please feel free to fill out the form below. Also, if you would like to have your own Bible, please fill out the form below and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our prayer and Bible study session.